Hi guys, Jaynotion here. Happy hump day. Hello boys and girls, I hope you're doing well. How is your day? We're nearly there, people. We're nearly there. The weekend is in sight. Just thought I'd give you a quick video. I've just come back from watching The Invisible Man. You wouldn't notice it from the shirt, and I haven't dressed up for the occasion. Shirt doesn't look a little bit weird on the webcam, I've noticed. It looks a little bit like the suit from the film. Spoilers, by the way. This will be my first movie discussion about The Invisible Man film released this year, 2020. What I was looking to do is just show you the trailer for the film, and then we'll go into a review and a discussion. So hang on to your seats. Here we go.
Representing Adrian's trust, I'm required to read a prepared statement. Cecilia, although our relationship was far from perfect, I thought that you would talk to me rather than run away.
Are you okay? What happened to him?
He cut his wrist. Per his final wishes, you're getting $5 million. Contingent, of course, on the fine print.
He can't be ruled to be mentally incompetent.
It just doesn't make any sense.
What?
Adrian wouldn't kill himself.
Listen, you're getting your freedom back, okay?
Sorry, I had to do it.
Don't let him haunt you.
Hello? I'm scared.
You don't have to be scared of him anymore.
He was a sociopath, completely in control of everything. He said that wherever I went, he would find me, walk right up to me, and I wouldn't be able to see him.
You okay?
Someone's sitting in that chair. I found something that can prove what I'm experiencing. You need help. Adrian is dead. I went to his house today. He's not dead.
I have a pile of ashes in a box that would disagree with you.
He has figured out a way to be invisible.
Only thing more brilliant than inventing something that makes you invisible is coming up with the perfect way to torture you, even in death. Adrian's true genius was how he got in people's heads.
Don't come any closer. Hey!
I'm not crazy. Please listen to me.
You're saying the person trying to kill you is in the room right now, but we can't see him?
He's listening. Where are you? Where are you? Show yourself! Come on! Do it! There you are.
Yeah, so that is the Invisible Man trailer. What I'm going to do now is just talk through the film, and if you haven't seen the film, what I will do is just do a quick section on what I thought of the film without spoiling anything for you, and then I will move on to spoiler discussions, but I'll let you know as and when I'm doing that, so don't worry too much. Don't know why we've got Chronicles of Riddick going now, but there you go. So yeah, my thoughts of the film, I really enjoyed it. It's one of those films where
Adrian?
you think you know what's happening, and most of the time you're right, but there's quite a few plot twists in there. There's quite a few moments where you think you have it all nailed down, and then it does sort of spin on its head a little bit. So overall, I would say if you haven't seen the film, it's not amazing. It's not the best horror slash thriller slash supernatural film that I've seen, but I think I do also struggle to remember the last one that I was really pleased with. So is it worth your money in terms of going to the cinema? Yes. Is it worth sleepless nights, constant chats and discussions with your friends about it, passing on word of mouth. Not really. Again, I'm not a film critic. I'm just your average Joe. I'm not here to slate the film in any way. I don't work for any particular company or business that works in the media. I'm just here to give my honest opinion of someone that's seen the film, and I'll just run through what I really liked and what I didn't like, and then we'll go into some spoiler discussions. So what I really liked is the atmosphere. I think the film is really, really good at suspense. It's really, really good at making you think like you know what's coming next. And there's some really good moments where I genuinely jumped out of my seat. I am a very, very big fan of horror games, horror films. I've seen countless films over the years, played countless games. I don't tend to jump that easily, and I can hold my hands up and say I genuinely jumped at least twice watching this film. So there are some parts where you can guess the suspense and you don't really jump, but there's other parts where the suspense is building up, you sort of try and figure out that something's coming. It doesn't happen. The scenes sort of play out as normal, and then in the middle of a scene where you would least expect it, where there's no sort of suspenseful music, there's no high string violins going or anything like that, and then all of a sudden, whack, you're left with a jump scare. So I was entertained by it, definitely, and I think if you are struggling to go and watch something at the cinema at the moment, or you're wondering what to see, and you're looking for a little bit of a horror fix, something that's going to make you think, definitely go. What was really odd was when I went to watch the film with my girlfriend, and when we were watching the film, a couple of people left. Now, normally that means one of two things. Either the film's utter shit and it's not what those people thought it would be, so they wanted to walk out. The other is it was so terrifying that people couldn't stand it any longer and they had to walk out and they couldn't face it. Now, if I was to guess, I would say it was the second, not the first. So I think it was the fear rather than the movie being utter shite. Don't just take my word for it. If you look at the critic scores for the film, they're generally quite good. Certain critics and sites are slating the film because of the lack of imagination, and I'll go through that more in the spoilers, but I think it serves exactly what it's been put out to do. It entertains, there's plenty of jump scares in there. It also gets you thinking. There's quite a few sections in the film where I sort of turned to my girlfriend and I said, what do you think's going on here? Or I reckon that's happening, and that guy's definitely doing something here. So it does prompt thought, and I love films that do that. I love films that really draw out your imagination, get you thinking, and get you wondering. So it definitely did that for me. That was definitely a pro. So another pro, I think, is the acting. I don't know any of the actors in this film. It's really bad of me, and there is a list that you can look up on Wikipedia. I will put in a link to the Wikipedia film link for this, so if you wanted to look at the cast and stuff, but I don't recognise any of the actors' names or actresses' names, so forgive me. The director is also Lee Wuyan or something like that. Again, a director I'm not familiar with. I'm not one of those people that looks who the director is and who the actors and actresses are prior to the film. I think it paints an unfair picture and an unfair expectation of what you're going into. I think a film should be based on what it is, the film itself, and it's very easy, I think, sometimes for people to look at who the director is, who the actors are, and make a decision straight away based on that. So I think, putting all that aside, the film definitely delivers, and it does pay its dues, basically. So yeah, the acting I thought was brilliant. There's a particular scene, and this is not a spoiler. A spoiler? It's been a long day, when it part Irish, part Australian then. So non-spoiler part of the film is the main actress who is experiencing what she's experiencing gets attacked by the Invisible Man, and she is on the floor, and as it is filmed, physically, there is obviously nobody there. There's nobody on top of her strangling her and throwing her around and all this kind of stuff. And you can tell there's some parts of it that was done through CGI and wires, but there's a very specific scene where she's in the kitchen and she is being attacked, and it is purely down to the actress's skill, if you like, in terms of how she reacts to the attack. And normally when you see people that don't have that mirror in front of them, or they don't have that other actor or actress to carry them through the scene and bounce off of in terms of acting, it's really badly put together. But in this particular scene, I thought it was brilliant. She did it so well. She was able to convince me that she was being attacked, and I had to think outside of the box for a second and realize that this is just someone filming her doing this, and she's rifling around on the floor doing all this. Normally it looks absolutely stupid and horrendous. I'm sure you've all seen films where that's happened, but this was delivered very, very well. And there's lots of scenes like that throughout the film where it is just this actress on her own, and she almost has to pull off this this atmosphere and this scenario and the environment and make it look believable to the audience. And I think she did that very, very well. I was completely convinced that she was being attacked. It added to the suspense, it added to the horror that was going on, and I genuinely bought into it. I think you know what I mean when sometimes you can look at a scene and subconsciously you're looking at it thinking, I know I'm watching a film, whereas when I watched this particular scene, I completely forgot that I was watching a film, and I was completely pulled in, and I think the acting was brilliant on that one. There is another guy, a policeman, that's a friend of the main character's sister, I think, and he sort of takes her in and looks after her and stuff after all the big hoo-ha at the beginning, which I'm not going to spoil at the moment. But the premise is that he looks after her, gets her back on her feet because she's really anxious, really depressed. She doesn't leave the house or anything like that. So he sort of takes her under his wing and tries to get her to feel more comfortable. And that particular actor, the guy, sometimes sold it to me, sometimes didn't. There were some bits that I thought were really, really cheesy. I know they were trying to put some humor into it. He was trying to throw out some jokes and try and make it so that, it's a bit of a ha ha ha, those kind of jokes, to try and break up the film a little bit so it's not continuously being put on an equilibrium of horror, scare. So I get why they did that, but I didn't buy into the joke. I don't know whether it was the acting or whether the actor himself just didn't feel comfortable enough to go through that kind of transition as the role he was playing. I don't know. That bit I didn't really like. But as a whole film, I think it was delivered very well. The sound is absolutely fantastic. The director has really worked on building up atmosphere, and you do really buy into some of the characters and their motives. It is a tale of two halves. I found the acting good overall. I didn't dislike it, but there are some parts that really stood out to me, and I thought, that felt really awkward there, or it felt really misplaced in that scene. I don't know, and it's rare for me to think that. It's rare for me when I'm watching a film to sit there and go, oh, that didn't really fit that well. But I noticed it a few times in the film. Aside from that, as I said, the sound was fantastic. The atmosphere was fantastic throughout, I think. I bought into the main actress. I bought into her story, so she sold it to me very well. I wanted to see how she brought people into her story and how she wanted to try and convince people that this was real and this was happening to her, but obviously everyone around her didn't believe her. So her acting was brilliant, and I think as a main character she did the job very well. Again, apologies, but I don't know who the main actress is. I haven't seen her in any of the TV shows or movies before, but I thought she delivered the role very, very well. The film as a whole, it is worth a watch, and I would say if you are looking at something to go and see at the cinema, I would recommend going and seeing it. You're not missing anything massive if you don't see it, if you just wait for the DVD release or the illegal download, however which way you watch it. But I think it's worth a go. I think it was rated 15, so the 15 is, I think, on the premise that there are some really bloody scenes. There's a bit of violence in there throughout as well. And I think it's the strong psychological and horror threat that makes it the 15. But yeah, I say it's well worth a watch. If I was to rate the film out of 10, I'd probably give it a solid 7, possibly an 8. Depends, some days you feel like, yep, that absolutely did that for me, that ticked that box, that did that. I didn't come away feeling that, but I came away satisfied. So I didn't come out of the cinema thinking, what a colossal waste of time. But I also wasn't blown away by it. I was happily satisfied, if that makes sense. So I'd give it a solid 7. And as a horror film, probably an 8. It's not the best I've seen, but again, I really, really liked it. I like the story. I'll go more into that in the next section in the spoilers. But my feelings on the film are great sound, good acting. The scenes were really put together very well. There was good transitions between the camera angles. There was a certain scene where the main actress was in the kitchen and she was cooking bacon in the frying pan, and she had to go and wake up the youngest, the daughter of the friend that she was staying with. As she walked away, the camera was sort of panning round, watched her leave the room, and then panned back, almost like it was on a fixed static camera on a swivel. And as the camera was coming back round, you saw that the frying pan was on fire all of a sudden. So obviously the Invisible Man had gone up, turned the frying pan on full blast, and then the kitchen was in flames. So it kind of gave you the sense that whilst you're watching what the character's doing, the Invisible Man is always in the scene, and it sort of plays on your mind a little bit, thinking, right, I'm looking at this character now. But as the film progressed and how well the scenes were shot, you are constantly drawn into that sense that the main villain or the Invisible Man is everywhere. So that's how well that was put together, and I thought that was really good. I've seen similar ways of filming and how it's been cut in films like Paranormal Activity. I think it gives it that home video sort of feel to it, but I really enjoyed it, and it gave the film an extra edge, I thought. So yeah, that's my thoughts. Stick around, guys, if you want to see and hear the spoilers for the film. I will go into a bit more detail about the plot, what happens, start, middle and end, and also how that ties in, and my thoughts on that as well. Thank you very much for watching the video. Please stick around if you want to watch the spoilers. If you did like the video, please give it a like and a subscribe to the channel if you want to see more content. This is my very first movie review, so please give me some comments. Let me know your thoughts. If there's anything you want to see, anything you think I could do differently, please let me know. And hopefully see you again next time. If you do want to see more content from the channel and you want to be notified of when that happens, please become one of my Quasimodos and ring the damn bell. Thanks, guys. Take care. See you soon. So, you're still here. God, you guys must be bored. I'm joking. Thank you very much for sticking around. This is the spoilers section of The Invisible Man. So, great film, I think. Great film. Like I said in the earlier part of the video, I was satisfied with the film. It delivered as a horror, and I came away feeling like it was money well spent. Wasn't the best horror I've seen, but again, each to their own. Don't just take my word for it. Look at the critic scores, look at the reviews that the movie magazines and the websites have been given, and it's got generally quite good scores. Metacritic, I think, gave it 77, and Rotten Tomatoes gave it 8 out of 10. So it's worth a watch, definitely. Spoilers now. So I went into this film thinking that this was a supernatural horror. It isn't. So just by looking at the trailer, I saw the trailer before I went into the film, and I was drawn into it because I felt that there was a supernatural element to it, and I think that's what people going into the film are expecting. However, that is not the case. So just starting from scratch, the story basically is that there is a lady and a man, they're together, and the The film starts off in this particular scene here that you can see on the screen, where she is trying to escape from the house, and you get the impression that she's quite distressed, she's quite upset. You also get the impression that a lot's happened and she just wants to get away from him and get away from the relationship. So she goes through drastic measures to do that. One of the things is she dumps diazepam into his glass, and you get the sense that he's been drugged and he's KO'd asleep. She collects all her stuff, messes around with the cameras in this house, so you also then get the impression that he's quite controlling. He has cameras everywhere, and she goes around sort of manipulating all the cameras, making sure that if in the instance he does wake up, she can still escape. So she escapes, she gets away, alarm gets triggered, he wakes up, chases her out of the house, and she barely manages to escape, but she drops the tube of diazepam tablets onto the floor as she escapes through the car. So fast forward time a little bit, she ends up staying with her sister's friend, I think it is. He's a policeman, and he's trying to get her back on her feet. He's trying to look after her. Because of his job, he's also protecting her and making sure that, you know, nothing untoward happens to her. Jump back a little bit. I'm going to try and remember this as much as I can in my head. So jump back a little bit. Before she escapes the house, she comes across what looks like a lab of some sort in the house. As she goes down to the basement to where the car is, she comes across a sort of a scientific place. There's loads of monitors everywhere, test tubes. There's this really weird rack that almost looks like, if you guys have played the Fallout games and you've got the power armor and you've got like the metal frame, there's one of those stood right at the back, and the camera takes a lot of time panning into it very slowly, so it gives you the impression that it wants you to remember this rack. There's something quite significant with it. So that happens. As I said, fast forward, she escapes, and she's now sort of trying to get her life back together. She gets a visit from her sister, and the sister tells her that the ex-boyfriend is now dead. He was killed, and she shows her a news article of his body on the floor, blood everywhere. He's, you know, something's happened, blah blah blah. What's really odd about the film is that it doesn't really explain how he died, but you get the impression that he was murdered. It wasn't an accident. So you then see the main character's sense of relief that she's now broke this control bond that the ex-boyfriend had on her, so that's all done. She then tries to piece her life together. In the next scene, she goes to visit the ex-boyfriend's brother, who's actually a lawyer, and his lawyer, the ex-boyfriend's lawyer, and he basically says to her, you know, you've got the rights to the estate, you own all this money now, we're going to give you £5 million. This is what, I think Adrian is the main guy's name, the boyfriend, can't remember, and he basically leaves his estate to her and leaves £5 million worth of goodies. So the lawyer then says to her, this is what's going to happen, this is what he's left in his estate to you, you're going to get £100,000 a month for the next however many years. So she sort of feels this sense of relief. She reluctantly accepts it, almost remembering how controlling and how much of a tosser he was to her, basically. And she reluctantly accepts the money. She does some good stuff with it, first of all. So when she goes back to the house where the policeman is looking after her with his daughter, the daughter's on about going to college, and, you know, I can't afford this, I can't afford that. So the main character, she sets up a bank account, puts in $10,000 in there, gives it to the daughter and says, look, now you can go and do what you want at college, I've paid for this for you, and I'm going to keep putting in money for you each month. And this policeman is decorating his house. He's got this really scabby old ladder that looks like it's been salvaged from the Titanic, and she basically gives him a new ladder. It's like an industrial, you know, titanium plated ladder or whatever, so he's really happy with that. Ties a nice bow on it. I've never seen anyone get so excited by a ladder, by the way. But he's over the moon. He takes the ladder, everything's great, what happens next is the main actress goes to get in the shower, and she comes across the tablet tube of diazepam that she dropped when she was running away from the ex. It's just neatly placed on the kitchen sink. She starts freaking out because she then realizes, I dropped that. The only way that that would get to me now is if the main guy, Adrian, is still alive and he's left it on the sink. So she starts freaking out. She tries to explain it to the policeman. The policeman says, well, obviously you must have just, misplaced it. You thought you lost it, all that kind of thing. Starting to go through logical, common sense thinking. It's been solved that she's a bit delusional, and the policeman sort of senses that she's not quite there. She's probably still distressed and she's still upset about what's happening, blah, blah, blah. So he accepts that the tablets are there, but he thinks that it's just a misjudgment on her part. Okay, nobody at any point thinks that Adrian is back from the dead, all that kind of stuff. The film plays on a little bit more, and slowly things start to happen where the main actress is convinced that Adrian is not dead. So what seals that for her is she goes to visit her sister. She senses that someone's in the house. She starts seeing things. Stuff starts being moved. The incident with the bacon, which I explained earlier. Pan goes on fire. Stuff starts going on and off on its own. The nail in the coffin for the main actress was there's a scene where she's asleep, and the duvet cover is being pulled off as she's asleep, and she wakes up, freaks out, tries to pull the duvet cover back, and this was brilliant CGI. She tries to pull the duvet cover, it's up like this, and then at the other end it looks like there's 2 feet on the end of the blanket. So she freaks out, she's kind of looking like this, tries to pull it, nothing happens, and then you can see the footprints moving towards her slowly on the blanket. So everyone was freaking out in the cinema. The music was excellent in that particular scene as well. Really, really added to the intensity of what was happening. So that happened. Then she starts screaming. The policeman comes in and says, I know he's here. This is happening. That's happening. Again, the policeman thinks she's a little bit deluded, that it's not actually happening. She's having post-traumatic stress, blah, blah, blah. Everything moves on. So because she's not getting any luck with the policeman, she goes to visit her sister. Now when she goes to visit her sister, the sister opens the door and says to her, if you didn't want me being around you and you find me suffocating, why didn't you tell me? I don't want anything to do with you. And the main actress is sort of looking at her as if to say, what the hell are you talking about? And the sister starts saying, I've done everything for you. I've stood by you even when I thought you were crazy. I can't believe that you think I'm suffocating you. What you said to me is disgusting. I can't forgive it. And basically the manager says, I don't know what the hell you're talking about. And the sister reveals that there was an email sent to her that day. Obviously the main actress denies the email. She says, I haven't sent you anything. I don't know what you're talking about. And the sister says, well, I don't want anything to do with you. You're on your own. Shuts the door in her face. The main actress is now convinced that Adrian sent this email to try and separate the people that around the main actress because he wants her all to himself. She is now fully convinced that he's alive. She goes back to the house where she's staying, where the policeman is looking after her, and she does something that's quite clever, and she gets her phone out and she calls Adrian's number. The freaky deaky part is that the phone vibrates through the ceiling, and she soon discovers that Adrian's phone is in the attic. Classic horror. So what happens now is she gets the stepladder, she opens the attic, it's pitch black, she goes up there armed with a torch. Your absolutely typical horror movie weapon. A torch can wipe out anything, no matter what it is, whether it's a monster or a ghost. All you need is your fucking torch. So she goes in the attic, she takes the torch with her, she starts scurrying around. She can't really find anything. She discovers Adrian's phone at the end of one of the beams. She picks up the phone and there's a text message that comes through from an unknown number that says, surprise. She then freaks out, turns around. She hears sort of like clanking on the ladder. Nothing comes into the attic. There's a really big suspense build up where she sort of army crawls towards the latch down. And as she gets there, she feels and senses that there's something there in front of her. So she grabs a pot of white paint, chucks it towards the hole, and as the paint, what you actually see is paint splat across a blank face. If you think of a silhouette, think of the Slender Man, if you know what I'm talking about, just a white silhouette. The paint hits the face, and you soon discover that there is a head and a body of some sort there. You just can't see any features. Music goes crazy. Then whatever this thing is goes down the ladder. She follows it down. She's convinced this is Adrian. And what ensues next is just a big scene of her sort of wrestling and fighting with this thing. And that was what I was talking about earlier, when she sells it really well that she's being attacked. And you really are convinced that she is being attacked. Great acting. And moving from that scene, the policeman comes back. Everything seems okay. She's absolutely deluded at this point. The main character, she is absolutely riling, and she's going around to everyone saying, this is happening, that's happening, and people think she's starting to go a little bit crazy. The nail in the coffin was, there's a scene where the actress is sat with the policeman's daughter, and they're talking about college, this, that, and the other. Everything's absolutely fine. There's no music build up. There's no tension, and all of a sudden, the daughter gets pimp slapped across the room. And that was one of the bits that made me genuinely shit my pants. I jumped out of my seat. I think everyone else did. You sort of hear that weird, awkward laughter where people have just been made to jump 10 miles out of their seat, and everyone in the cinema sort of going, because you don't expect it. It was really, really well done, really well put together. It wasn't one of those moments where you anticipated it. It was just a conversation they were having, and all of a sudden, she just gets backhanded from nowhere from something. The daughter freaks out, screams for her dad. Her dad comes in and she says, she's hit me, because it was done so quickly and they were quite close together. The daughter was convinced that it was her that hit her. So the policeman freaks out, takes the daughter out of the house and says, you need to go. And it sort of isolates the main character away from everyone else. What happens then is she's sort of left in there on her own, and she has to discover what's what and what's going on. So, fast forward time. She then she sends a message to her sister saying, please meet me. Something's going on. I don't know what's going on here. I know that he's alive. I just can't prove it, blah, blah, blah. Sister agrees to meet her, and they start having a discussion about what's happened. And the sister's looking at her as if to say, go on, tell me what you're going to say. And the main character sort of says, well, I've got proof. So she goes to the house where Adrian was, their ex-boyfriend. She manages to find this lab again. And while she's in the lab, she comes across this, like I said, this frame that sort of looks like the power armor rack from Fallout. And she presses all these weird buttons, and all of a sudden it sort of shows this suit. And the suit is sort of made from optics and cameras. So it kind of feeds into what the guy does as his job. He is a sort of engineer and designer, and this is the suit that he's made. So it's got all these different weird cameras on it. She pulls the suit off of the mannequin, puts it in the bag, takes it away. And this is the proof that she's got. So when she meets up with the sister, they start talking. The sister's convinced that she's mad, and she says, no, I've got proof, look at this. Goes to pull out the suit, and out of nowhere, and I mean out of nowhere, a knife comes across, slits the throat open. It's great. Blood goes everywhere. Obviously everyone's sat in this restaurant and they all start screaming. The knife lands in the actress's hand, so it looks like she's done it. And then everyone's just sort of pulling their hair out, wondering what the hell's going on. Fast forward, she gets put in a nut house. Everyone around her is still convinced that she's crazy. The policeman still is reluctant to talk to her, and because of obviously the incident with the daughter, and he starts saying to her, I think you need to see this, I think you need to see that. It's him and another guy that interviews her, but the main character is sort of talking to the policeman, but looks around and says, I can't say anything, he's in the room, I can't speak to you. Sort of whispers to him. He wants to believe her, and you can tell on his face that he really wants to believe her. but his human side is just saying, no, you're batshit crazy. So it fast forward, she's in the psychiatric room in the hospital. It then turns out that she gets a phone call from the doctor, and the doctor says, we've done some blood tests on you. It turns out that you're pregnant, and she sort of turns around and says, well, that's impossible. And the doctor says, it's a very, very recent pregnancy. You're very early on, so it's happened within the last month. This is when she absolutely freaks out because, one, she's been away from Adrian for longer than a month, and also he's been dead in a longer space of time. She obviously hasn't had sex in that time, and she's sat there thinking, what has he done? Something must have happened to me in my sleep, blah, blah, blah. Starts freaking out. So she drops the phone to the doctor. She's sat in the cell. It looks like she's completely lost it at this point. The big twist is that the brother of Adrian, the lawyer, turns up and says to her, one of the conditions of giving you the £5 million of the estate was that you don't get convicted and you're mentally stable. You've breached both of those, so we're not going to give you any more money. The only way around this now is if you sign this piece of paper that says that you agree to have the baby and you can keep the money. So then there's a plot twist that the brother is involved and he knows about Adrian and he's working alongside him. He's trying to get control back to Adrian so that their babies, they're back together, they keep the baby and everything else. So she then freaks out. She very cleverly steals one of the gold pens that he keeps in his briefcase as they're talking. He stands up, goes to pick up the paper, and she steals the pen off the table. She says, I'll never sign anything. And he said, I'll give you 3 days. So she goes back into the room. As she's sat there, the guard leaves. The guard checks all the cracks and corners. He leaves. As he leaves, she goes into the shower, and up by the seal at the top, she's basically got some blue tack and the gold pen that she stole. So she's took the pen down. She knows Adrian is in the room with her, and she turns on the shower and says to him, you won't have me and you won't have the baby. She cuts herself down the arm with the pen. It's quite gruesome, but she does it. Goes so far, and then he grabs her arm to try and stop her. Then they have a little brawl. She stabs him about 5 or 6 times with the pen, and it actually messes up his suit. So now you can start to see he's almost in like an exoskeleton suit. Kind of looks like a suit if you've played any of the Metal Gear Solid games. Looks like that kind of suit, but it's got loads of fiber optic cameras on it, and it's starting to sort of jitter and flash, so you can see half suit and then half is invisibility. So they sort of have a brawl. She escapes from the room, and then Adrian, or what we think is Adrian, sort of murders 5 or 6 security guards that come into the area in different ways. A little scuffle ensues. They get outside. It's pissing down with rain, and he's trying to escape because he's wounded, and she follows him out with a gun that she's taken from one of the guards. He gets in a car and drives off, and he basically says something along the lines to her of, I'm going to kill everyone that's close to you, you belong to me, blah, blah, blah. She regains consciousness. He says that to her while he's choking her out. I'm going to, you've done this, da, da, da. You're going to be responsible for the death of your friend's daughter, which, if you remember, is the daughter of the policeman that Adrian slapped. He drives off. She gets in another car, follows him, rings the policeman and says, you need to get home to your daughter. She's in danger. So the next scene is the daughter's in the house. You just see the front pantry door open on its own. And all of a sudden, the daughter starts getting choked on the floor. A little scuffle ensues. She pulls out her mace, maces him in the face, tries to run down the corridor. Classic horror style. She gets caught and her legs get pulled out from under her. She gets dragged along the corridor. You can't actually see who's doing it at this point because the suit seems to be kind of fixed at this stage. And a little scuffle ensues. Her dad comes back, the policeman, sort of sees what's happening, freaks out a little bit, and then Adrian takes advantage of this, disarms him from the gun, beats him to a pulp, leaves him half dead on the floor. As he turns his attention back to the daughter, the main actress comes into the house and unloads about 5 or 6 bullets into him. So he then dies on the floor. Everyone's all hunky-dory, the policeman's still alive, and what happens now is that they pull the mask off, and it's actually revealed to be Adrian's brother, the lawyer. So then everyone's in the cinema sort of gasping, saying, you know, it was him this whole time. So then the twist and what you think's happening is the brother is the nutcase, and Adrian was actually the one trying to protect the main actress. Fast forward time a little bit. The policeman says to the main actress, you know, he's dead. The brother's gone. Adrian's fine. We've actually found him. They went back to the house after this, Adrian's house, and they found Adrian in the basement tied up. So the policeman says to the main actress, you know, it's the brother that's the psychopath. He obviously wanted to be Adrian. He wanted you. He wanted to have the control. He wanted to have the wealth, the fame, blah, blah, blah. The main actress is not convinced. She says, you don't know what he's like. I've dealt with him. I've lived with him. I know what he's like. He's controlling, and this is not him. So I'm not convinced this is the case. He is the mastermind behind all of this, not the brother, as sick as the brother was. Policeman sort of huffs and says, oh, you know, come on. I thought you were on board now. It's all dealt with. The woman's completely convinced it's not. Fast forward time a little bit, she rings Adrian's phone. He answers it and says, oh, you know, it's great to hear you. Let's meet up. So she goes to meet him at the house. He's stood outside waiting for her. She comes in. She's all dressed up and glammed to the nines and says to him, you know, I've really missed you. Let's talk about what happened. They sit down for a nice meal. She says, if you want anything to do with this baby, you have to tell me the truth and you have to admit what you did to me and what the relationship was about. All the meanwhile, the policeman has dropped her off and he's in the car outside listening to what's happening. So she's obviously got a wire. And there's sort of a tense moment with Adrian, and he sort of looks at her and says, I was never like that to you. I don't know what you're talking about. And she sort of breaks down and says, you know what you did to me. You know what the relationship was like. Tell me that you were in on all of this, that you convinced your brother to do it, and you're both in it together. Think of all the carnage you've caused. You killed my sister and made it look like it was me. You made me to look like I was insane, and, you know, reels off everything that's happened in the film. Adrian outright denies it and says, you know, I'm here to look after you. You're clearly sick, but let's talk about it, blah, blah, blah. And the main actress sort of changes her approach, and all of a sudden she sort of smiles a little bit and says, okay, well, we can make this work. I'll forgive you. He sort of gives a smile back, and then she says, I just need to clean myself up in the bathroom. He's like, yeah, great. Policeman's still listening to at this point, and then all of a sudden you see Adrian sat at the table, and the knife that was used to kill her sister is in the main actress's bag. It comes out of the bag in thin air. Adrian grabs the knife like this, and then he, what looks like, slits his own throat. He falls to the floor. He's nearly dead. She comes out of the bathroom, sits down in front of him, looks at him, and it's one of those moments where you think, have that, you bastard. Looks him dead in the face and says, surprise. So it all comes full circle. I clocked it at this point that she'd actually taken the suit off of the mannequin. I remembered earlier in the film that when she went back to the house, to the basement, she took the suit, and it was the suit that she used. So she went to the bathroom, put on the suit, made it look like he'd killed himself. She then very cleverly rang 911 and said, my partner's just killed himself. He had the knife. And because she was invisible and she had the suit on, all the cameras in the house make it look that way. So it really is a full-fold revenge now. She's got her own back on him in all the ways that he caused pain to her. The policeman comes running out because he's sort of hearing the commotion. As she's leaving the house, he sort of says to her, you know, you had no intention of getting a confession from him, did you? In the first place, you just wanted revenge. And she said, well, I tried. I wanted him to confess to it, but this is the way that now it's turned out to be. I basically saying I can't let him live. She says to the policeman, there's loads of cameras in the house. He's committed suicide, looking at him as if to say, hasn't he committed suicide? And she looks to the policeman and says, what did it sound like was happening? And the policeman takes a moment to think about what he's going to say, what's going to happen, looks back at her and says, "It sounds to me like he killed himself." So they both agree that he's not safe enough to be kept alive. He's in on the plot now, and it all comes full circle, and then the film ends. So, hopefully I didn't ramble on too much about all that, and that is the full plot. There are some other bits that happen in between, but that's the full plot of what happens in the film. As I said, I was convinced it was a supernatural horror, and thinking back on it now, if you're very, very aware of what you see and what you spot, I think you can figure out from the beginning that it's not a supernatural horror, because of the section in the very first scene where she runs down and escapes, and you notice there's all this lab stuff going on. You learn very early that he's a very wealthy, a very smart optical engineer. So my theory was that he died, however, he's managed to find a way to bridge the gap between the other side and the human existence, and it is Adrian, but he's found a way to defeat death, basically. I thought that was the premise of it, but it actually turns out that he was just a crazy obsessive boyfriend. He wanted to control her. He had cameras all around the house. He knew what she was doing, where she was going. She didn't want a baby with him. She was taking this birth control, which he also knew, and he was giving her sedatives and stuff like that, and it all gets a little bit dark. But essentially, he's the Fruit Loop. He doesn't want her going out enjoying herself, having friends. He wants full control over her, and he wants her all to himself. She was always looking for a way to escape, and the only reason why she's only looking to escape now is because she feels that she's under threat, and it's becoming obsessive, and she sort of confides in her sister to get her out of the situation, which is what happens at the start. So I really, really like the film. As I said, I was expecting it to be a supernatural film, and this is why I went to see it, because all that kind of stuff really interests me. I love the horror films where it's all about the unknown. Don't get me wrong, if there's a psycho with an axe, that's good, but I like the unknown. It adds to the intensity a little bit. But I'm going to be honest, I was a little bit let down that it was just a nutcase of a boyfriend that managed to build this suit of invisibility, basically. So it turns out to be more of a sci-fi thriller rather than a horror, paranormal sort of film. Don't get me wrong, I did enjoy it. I just think I came away from it thinking a little bit, I wish I would have gone that direction with it, rather than it's just an obsessive boyfriend with an invisibility suit that he's designed as part of his work and the skill that he has. That's essentially the plot of the film. The girl wants to get away from the boyfriend wants to control her. She does eventually escape, and the reason why he doesn't just let her go is because he's had loads of women throughout his life, and she's the only person that has tried to get away because of his wealth and his fame and his money, and he's quite charming, handsome, blah blah blah, and he gets a kick out of not letting her go. He knows he can have anybody that he wants, but he just wants this one woman because he knows she's not happy and she wants to break away, so he gets a weird sort of predatory kick out of it. So that's the whole premise of the film. He did design this suit, and it makes him go invisible. It's a full body exoskeleton suit. It's got weird cameras on it, and it can make him turn invisible, basically. That's it. He doesn't have any supernatural powers. It's just a suit that he puts on, and you don't really know it's not really fully explained on what the breaking point is for the main character and why she needs to escape, but you just get a premise throughout the whole film. There's little hints that the guy's an absolute psychopath and he's got control issues and he doesn't want her to go anywhere. So I think that's the basic premise of it. Yeah, I came away satisfied. I just didn't. Looking at the trailer, you'll probably agree with me. It looks very supernatural, and there were slight elements of it, but you were able to work out very easily that it was Adrian, whether it was supernatural or not. And also, if you were very eagle-eyed and you had a keen sense of what was going on in the environment and the way that the camera panned so intensely at the rack in the beginning, it was very easy looking back at it to work out that he must have built something or designed something that he is now going to use to terrorize her for the rest of the film, and that's essentially what he did. It was a nice plot twist that the brother was involved. The brother, when you first meet him, gives you the impression that he hates Adrian and he wants nothing to do with him, and he controlled him just as much as he did with his girlfriend, and he just wants to be separated from him. He says stuff like, I hate him, I'm glad he's dead, I'm relieved, take his money, whatever he's done. That was sold to us very well. So the big nice surprise was that the brother was involved in it the whole time, but Adrian was the mastermind. So I think as a psychological sci-fi thriller, absolutely brilliant. I don't know, maybe I'm just being a bit picky, but sometimes I don't get a full satisfaction from it. If I look at a trailer and I think that's the film I think it's going to be, and then I come away with something different. An example of that is The Nun. If you've seen The Nun, I'm not going into it, but I was expecting full-blown horror, and there were parts of that film where I was laughing, and it wasn't laughing because it was funny, I was laughing because it was not a joke and a piss take. For example, near the end, it turns into like a comedy horror where you've got people with shotguns and it looks like a scene from Scary Movie, and I'm like, what the hell is going on here? So yeah, that I felt a little bit like that, but not to the extreme. It didn't ruin the film for me. It just let down my expectations of it a little bit. So overall, I'd give it a 7 out of 10. I think it's well worth a watch. If you are wondering what to go and see at the cinema, I would definitely recommend it. Just bear in mind that you're going in watching a thriller, not a horror film. There's nothing supernatural about it, but don't get me wrong, there's plenty of jump scares, there's plenty of good acting in there, there's plenty of good scene transitions, there's loads of suspense. I just think the one and only thing that really deflated it for me was that you found out very early on that there's nothing supernatural going on. But yet, throughout the film, they still made you, or try and convince you that it was supernatural. We all knew that it was a suit from the second she took the paint over his face, or, you know, if you were thinking back enough to the lab that he had in the basement, you could work out that he'd built something and he was trying to terrorize her because she escaped. So yeah, go and watch it. It is worth it. Just go in with expectations of what it is. I think the trailer fools people a little bit, which I don't always like. I was expecting it, as I said, to be something along the lines of it's a spirit that's haunting a house, or it's haunting her. No one believes her, she's trying to escape, all that kind of stuff. But it is just a nutter in a suit, basically. But don't get me wrong, it was entertaining. So 7 out of 10. That is my thoughts on The Invisible Man. Thank you very much. Okay guys, that's the video for today. Thank you very much for taking the time to watch it. I hope you enjoyed the content. If you did, please leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you want to see more videos. Please let me know in the comments below if there's anything you want me to change on these movie reviews. As I said, this is my very first movie review. Please bear with me if it's a bit cringy. Please throw some suggestions my way if there's anything you want to see different, or if there's anything I can do differently on the reviews. And I hope to see you again next time. I will be uploading a video as well quite soon on Zombie Army 4 Dead War. I've promised it in a couple of videos, but I will be doing it. Apologies, the footage I did save before has gone corrupt and I lost the lot. So I've had to start again. I've fiddled around with a few settings and I've got it sorted now. So bear with me, that will be going up soon. As I said, thank you very much for taking the time to watch the video. If you want to see more content, please subscribe to the channel. And let me know in the comments below if you've seen the film, what you thought about it, what were your thoughts on the film, do you agree or disagree with me, and also if it sounds like something you're going to watch. I would definitely recommend it. It's worth your time. Thanks guys, take care, see you soon, peace out.